Good morning, everyone. This is the special board meeting for Woodland District 50 Board of Education, March 14th, 2020. The time is now 8:41. Roll call.
Carla.
Here.
Joe.
Yeah, here.
Lizzie.
Here.
Jennifer.
Here.
Renee. Here. Nasima. Here. David.
Here.
We have quorum.
Great. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, got quite a few folks in the room. Did anyone sign up to have a citizen statement? Yeah, we didn't think so, but we have to ask. Okay, so moving forward, then we'll move on to reports and discussions. Before we, how about first, before we get into all of that, can I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second. Discussion? Roll call vote.
Carla.
Aye.
Joe.
Yes.
Lizzie.
Yes.
Jennifer.
Yes.
Renee.
Yes.
Nasima. Yes. David.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Great. Okay, so moving on then to the next item, reports and discussions. We called this special board meeting this morning first because we were hearing lots in the community. I think at the point when we called the meeting, a couple of schools had closed. We wanted to bring all of those facts to the board about what's happening with this COVID-19 pandemic and give you the facts on how that affects our district. Lori and Joy have put together, as well as the team, have put together some documents that were in our packet. We'll go through, they'll give us a presentation of what is the current status as we know it so far, then tell us what the plan is moving forward with how we will manage our students, our staff, and certain business aspects that are impacted by this pandemic. And then finally, you guys will have an opportunity to weigh in on those decisions, let us know if we're on the right track, and things that we could do as well as a district to ensure that all of our community is informed and included in, as we move through this process. So I'll turn it over to Joy.
And then we'll pass to
Okay.
Lori. So first, for those that are here and those that are watching, this is a time like no other. So we're really processing and planning with a different way of systems thinking. Our plans need to be fluid and responsive. And I just want to thank our district leadership team, our union, our staff that really pulled together this week as we were in the preparedness phase of this crisis to get our resources together. There are 7 pieces that Lori and I want to cover and brief you about this morning. The first is Lori will go over with you the outline of our preparedness plan. We want to talk with you about access to food, educational resources, cleaning, communication, intergovernmental collaborations, and community supports. And then, as Carla said, some staff matters and some questions that we are hearing. We will also need your concurrence with some plans that we have with respect to cleaning and some dollars expended that are already part of the budget, but that's our plan for this morning. Does that sound good? Okay, so we'll turn over to Lori to outline our preparedness crisis plan, the document in your board book.
Sure. So the document in your board book, as you can see, is a pretty comprehensive document. It goes through the 4 phases that we would normally use in the event of a crisis. We're currently at the response phase, and the response phase is the phase right now where, because our schools have been closed, what is our response to that? And it takes on a variety of I almost view it as this is the response, and it's like a spider. So there's a lot of things that come out of that response. When I say that this team has changed this plan by the minute this week, that's not an exaggeration. Our preparedness has changed constantly as we continue to get new information from our local, state, and federal agencies, and that's when this plan changes. And like Joy said, that's the beauty of this, is that we're able to change this and do what's best. So as we go through some of our other areas today, we'll talk about part of right now the communication phase, what we're doing to keep our schools clean while our students are not there, and how we're preparing for them to eventually return, and some of the other things that we're doing. So if you look at the beginning of this document, it talks about, there's a lot of definitions out there of what this is. This was one we took from the Department of Public Health. I'm not obviously going to read this 23-page document to you, but I'm going to take you back down to the response phase. And the response is, what are we going to do when the emergency occurs? So right now, this is, as Joy said, a community health crisis. And so as a school district, what is our response to that? Let me go down to here.
What page are you on?
I'm just trying to go down to
Oh, you're on.
response.
Thank you. Thank you, Donna.
Oh, 14.
14.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. So 14, I'm going to have Brooke talk a little bit now about what our communication is for our district website and social media, where we're at right now for communication with our families and with our community.
Yes.
Yes, you do.
While she's doing that, did you want to talk a little bit about some of the meetings that you've been a part of?
Oh, certainly.
Sure, for this last couple weeks, or
Yes.
in general with?
Yeah, and how that has helped to inform your plan?
Oh, sure.
Sure. Well, actually, I can talk a little bit about last year. I had
Okay.
last April, I was able to participate in the Illinois pandemic planning with Dr. Little, and that was in preparation for a pandemic such as this. So we were able to take some of that information and bring it to a situation like today. These last couple of weeks, we have been meeting 24/7, whether it was in person, virtually, on the phone, as information changed. So our leadership team, our central office team, our community members, which we'll talk about in a little bit, we've been in constant communication. We've been in constant communication with not only our healthcare agencies, but our Lake County Superintendent's organizations, which has been an amazing support. So there's
Briefings with the governor's office yesterday, our professional associations, both state and nationally. It is fluid and evolving and moving very, very quickly. And our job as your leaders is to be responsive to those new information that comes out and making decisions that are informed based upon research and what we're learning.
So we've been meeting, like I said, we've been meeting constantly and changing our plans, especially this last week and the week before. Dr. Thomas and Dr. Vandenbroek have been meeting with our educational specialists to pull together resources for our students, and they can talk about that in a little bit. But it really has been an all-hands-on deck. Let's do what's best for our students. Let's do what's best for our families to be ready when this happens. So it's been a lot of not just us meeting, but a lot of different groups meeting on getting their professional organizations information of what we should be doing in a time like this. So what should we be doing from an HR perspective? What should we be doing from a
Special
cleanliness
ed.
perspective, from a special education perspective? So everybody's been pulling in and using best practice and talking to people. We also have great relationships with when I say we, I mean the team that's sitting here. They have great relationships with not only their professional organizations, but our community members here and in the state of Illinois. So when we had questions, they would call them right away and say, what are you going to do about this? How are you going to handle this? So that's been a lot of this week so that we can do the best we can. So that's been great.
Great.
So it wasn't just an isolated Joy and I sitting in a room and
goodness,
Chris
no.
and making any decisions. It was definitely this team, all hands on deck.
Good.
So,
Brooke.
Brooke, do you want to talk a little
Okay.
bit about where we're at right now?
Sure. So with communications in a crisis situation, you, right at the beginning, you identify who are our key audiences.
Come forward a little bit. Yep, thanks.
Okay. So you start with identifying your key audiences and really starting to frame a plan. And so you start at the beginning, we were sending out messages to our families and to our staff that, the preventative measures, cover, cough, contain. We wanted to let our parents know, here's the things the district is doing to prepare. Here are the things that you can do at home to prepare. And then it moves on to the next phase, which is now response. A big challenge when it comes to communicating during a crisis is that the information is changing so fast that by the time we're just about ready with the approved message that we're sending out to be translated, it's already outdated before we get the translation back. So we've made jokes that we get the information out, and by the time the parent opens their email or the staff member opens their email, there's new information. And the other challenge is there is so much information to share, and really dialing down and targeting what do we want our audience to know right now. And so a good example of that, yesterday, we needed to let staff know first so that they had time to prepare, and we had to let our parents know so that they had time to prepare as soon as we possibly could. But we had a ton of information, and we wanted to add this, and we need to explain this, and we need to make sure they understand what's coming next. And it was like, at some point you have to draw the line and say, today we need to let our staff know to prepare that when they send their students home tonight, they are not going to see them for 2 weeks at least.
Right.
So, when it comes to communicating, we have to be fluid because it's changing rapidly. We want to be reliable, we want to be timely, and we want to give people information as often as we can. So, since we can't send out an email every 5 minutes as things change, we rely on our website to be kind of a common resource that we can update, as we go. So, we just try to layer the communication, and then moving forward, there's so much information to share. We let them know it's closed, that school's closed next week. Now we have to let them know all the things that come along with that. Some of the decisions and discussions you're having today, how to connect with resources, how to make sure they have everything they need moving forward. So that's just an overview. If anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer them, but
Brooke, you also use social media channels?
sure. So at first, we were not very active on social media because everybody was talking about, the preventive measures and stuff. So we shared a few things, but then once we made the decision, we posted that on our social media channels. We also sent out an email and robocall and those layers like I talked about. But on social media, it's a very hot topic. And so not only is it important what we post and what people respond on our post, but we're monitoring some of these other groups like Gurney Moms and Gurney Town Forum because people are asking questions there too. And even if we're not able to provide immediate responses on social media, we use that information to kind of develop our list of frequently asked questions. And that gives us a good pulse on what the community needs from us. And so as we're developing the next communication message that we are going to push out, we kind of know what they're looking for.
And what we've talked about initially is, so those 4 pieces, the website and driving and making sure the website is updated daily, the frequency, over communicating in this next week, and as Brooke said, giving different pieces and layers of communication in the same format so they can get used to, here's how we're going to get the information. So social media channels, and then some of the board members, and we were talking about robocalls too, and making sure, even if the robocall is not a long call, it's the website has been updated, please check this for information. So really using all the strategies that we have now to push that information out.
Are there any questions?
So I can say we talked this morning about this next week. You'll be seeing I know Renee loves our emails. You'll be seeing a lot of emails coming from Brooke, because as we get information that could possibly help our families, we want to make sure they get that as soon as possible. So our plan is to have approximately one email a day, some information at least once a day to our parents to say, here's this resource, and we purposely, like she said, we're saving that so we could get the first information out on Friday, and starting Monday, we'll be sharing some of those resources regarding food and internet and mental health services and those things. But it'll be more this week, because those questions we'll be trying to answer for our community. Okay.
So I have a couple of suggestions
Yes,
and
sure.
some questions. So my suggestion is that we establish a battle rhythm for when we would send out an email, or so that parents know at
That's a good idea.
10:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. I will get an update from the district
good idea.
on what's the current status of the district's response. So that would
That's
be
an excellent
a
idea.
recommendation that I would have. And then also, I think it's important that when you send out things on social media, if we know that you're sending it out, again, establish a battle rhythm for that, so you're not overtaxing yourself. And, then parents also know that it's a reliable time.
Got it.
But when you do that, I think would be helpful for board members and some key communicators if we reshare your message.
Yeah.
So if we know it's coming, then we reshare it. I think it's important that
Sure.
we're all resharing
Yes.
the
Yes.
message to sort of push it out further. And
love
then
that.
all the information that you push out, I know you'll probably do this and you already have plans for it, just making sure that you refer them back to the Woodland website. So even if you send out the FAQs, the frequently asked questions, it's posted on the website, please give them the link. And that
Okay,
way you just
sure.
keep it updated on the website, and people know that's the most reliable, up-to-date information. And let them know, I'm going to update the website, every day at this time, so that people know it's reliable.
Yeah,
They're not
that's
guessing
great.
when it's happening. But those would be my
Those
suggestions.
are excellent suggestions.
In addition to that, Carla, I think that robocall yesterday that went out, so, of course, I knew what was happening because I was in communication with you all, but, like, my friends who have kids in the district didn't check their emails because they were still working.
Sure.
But when one of my girlfriends got the robocall, and I got it too, but as soon as she got it, she was like, oh my God, it's something important, because we don't often get
Right.
robocalls.
Right,
So
we
even
use
if
Right.
that
it's-
as a very limited,
Right.
so that we know.
Right. So even if it's just to say, make sure you check the website
Right.
for updates, just to remind people, I thought that was good, because then it really lets you know, okay, it's something I probably should
It's
listen
good.
to, or check the email.
To Brooke's point, I think we're very, and to your point too, when we do robocalls, what happens is here, in our world, then people see our number come up and they immediately
call
start
here.
calling back because they don't listen to their messages. So they'll call back here. And when children are in school, they think something's wrong with their child. So we get, people like, is my child okay? What's happening? So we try to save it. If they see that there's a call from the school, they're like, oh, I better pay attention, something's different. So we may be doing that more when we know, for example, when we'll be coming back into school, or we know if there's been a big change. But otherwise, we do like to push. But we also want to make sure we're hitting every audience,
And-
So not every audience is
On email.
is on email or is on social media. So we try to vary it, but sometimes people are like, oh, it's the school calling again. Then they stop listening,
Right.
and we never want
Right.
that to happen.
It loses
Yeah.
its importance if it's
But your
used too
point is
much.
right. People are like, oh, this is something new. I better pay
But I
attention.
think the timing is important, because
Definitely.
if I see something in the daytime, and if I see a phone call in the evening time, well, I know no one's calling for my kid.
Right.
Because there's
Yeah.
sometimes you guys will get the robocall in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the timing of the robocall is important, so you don't have a bunch of callbacks. But I will say, one of the things I directly saw yesterday was people don't check their emails during the day because we're working.
Right.
But when you see that phone call, you're like, oh shoot. So
Listen to it. That's good feedback for us to have. Going off of the strategy of battle rhythm, one way that you all can help, and we'll discuss it this weekend and on Monday, is get a battle rhythm for you all to send questions that you're hearing out in the community to us. So we'll put some system together for you, because if you can send to our team here, what you're hearing, then as we're updating those questions, they'll be more timely. Now, the challenge for all of us will be is that many of the questions that our community has, we don't have the answers to right now. When are you coming back? How long might this be? So our obligation, what we've talked about, is just telling people the honest truth, which is if we don't have the answer to the question, just give them something to respond to. So we'll set that up for you and put that in an email to you by the end of the day on Monday,
Yeah.
because that would really help us.
I think the most important thing is we have to be factual. And if we don't have the
Exactly.
information, just say, we don't
don't
know.
know.
Right.
And then also, we don't know, and if it refers back to our plan, refers back to, here's the strategy, based on our plan, here's the strategy that we're using. Or if we don't know when we're coming back, here's where we're relying on for information
For
on
our
coming
sources,
back.
yes.
Here are our sources, because, we don't want to put out correct. We don't want to respond emotionally.
Right.
Exactly.
We want to respond factually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Another just clarification based on what you were saying, I'm a big believer in it's not our message to share. So for example, you want to link to those reliable sources. It's not up to me to tell our parent, rephrase and whatever.
Right.
We'll say, the governor said this, here's his press release.
Right.
This is what we're getting from the Lake County Health Department,
Yep.
and link to that, because they're the source of information. And if their if their information is changing, well, then people can go to them and get the most up-to-date information,
Yes.
rather than putting it on our website and now it's
Right.
outdated because they've
Right.
changed their guidance.
We're the drivers, we've been talking about all week. We're the driver and the conduit to those other governmental agencies.
But when it comes to what Woodland is doing and the decisions we're making, then that is our message, so.
Are there other
Jennifer,
questions?
thoughts?
No?
I think those were great suggestions for the communication.
Okay, thanks.
'Cause I know
Thank
you
Brooke.
guys are battling with this
Yeah.
in your real job, so. Yeah,
I'm going to-
okay,
to
thanks.
clean it.
Yeah. So the next phase that we can talk about, we have Don and John
And
we
Mark.
have, and Mark here from Citywide. So Don and John, gentlemen, could you come up and share what we're currently doing and what we will be doing in relation to cleaning?
And our deep cleaning plans.
And the case.
Haven't talked to the board in a long time. But I was gonna get away with it before then. Anyway, I'm Don Sulzer, Director of Operations Facilities. Hello, everybody. I'm Mark Batista, President of Citywide Building Maintenance. So what we're gonna do now, since we got the guidance from the governor to secure for 2 weeks, our goal is that, according to the plan, we'll secure and lock the buildings for 24 hours and keep our systems running. We can monitor that remotely. We don't like to do it, but we'll do it for the 24 hours unless we hear banging and crashing and flooding. Our guys can hear that, then we'll come in and do that. Then, according to what everything, we didn't link it to anything because we're not that smart right now, but what the CDC says is we're gonna let the buildings settle for 24 hours, and then we're gonna open the windows the next day, excuse me, air it out. Doesn't make sense, but that's what they say. I guess everything's settled, so anything, it won't be airborne, so we'll like open the windows up in springtime. 24 hours, then we'll start working with Citywide to develop our plan to clean. You have to clean first. You'll see a lot of things that say, hey, this cleans and disinfects, but what it does, that product doesn't disinfect as good because it's using most of its disinfectant to clean. So we'll clean everything first, then we'll work with Citywide. Of course, they're a cleaning contractor, so they'll be working on that for us as well. And then they have a neat little gizmo here, electrostatic charge unit that will spray the compound. I'll let Mark speak to that, but that will go around and hit all surfaces, get under surfaces, even get into some open piping, from chairs and stuff. Sometimes they have open, piping on it. So it does a really nice job on that. As far as we'll coordinate with the schools, so I think admin's still gonna be here during some of the time. So that, if there's a need for them to get in the buildings, we can let them know, hey, you know, we're disinfecting this time. Here again, I think this plan changed several times yesterday.
It did.
So we're here to help, so we'll do whatever Dr. Joy, Mr. Bovek, and Dr. Casey say, Don and John do this, so.
So before we pass to Mark, so let's frame out what we currently do. So currently, we are cleaning our classrooms twice a week. We're recommending that we increase through this pandemic crisis, that we're going to be increasing that cleaning at the appropriate time through 3 times a week. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the classrooms will get cleaned. This is after the deep clean and when the children eventually come back. And then all offices will be twice a week. We know we have the board's support to expend, those funds as part of our budget to increase the frequency of the cleaning. Is that, so that's a mitigation strategy and a response strategy we're doing. The second one that Mark's going to talk about is what we've been reading through the CDC, Illinois Department of Public Health, and nationally, and that is this electrostatic cleaning. Now, our board members should know that our teachers and our staff are administrators, the most amazing humans in this community. They truly are. Not only on Monday are they going to be getting the educational resources ready for our children, but they're also going to be Mari Koto tidying up. We've worked with Citywide to figure out how to stage the classrooms and the offices to get the most from this environmental deep cleaning that we're going to be doing. So we're really putting strategic strategies in place, meaning you have all the chairs in a row. There's certain strategies that we talked about yesterday morning at 7 to get the rooms ready. So we want the board and the community to be rest assured that we'll be decluttering as best we can to get the most out of this piece. So we'll turn over.
To clarify, Dr. Joy, also on the Tuesday and Thursday will be gyms,
Yes,
multipurpose
thank you.
rooms,
Yes.
and cafeterias as well as offices.
Right.
So every place is going to get an extra day of
Buses.
cleaning.
Thank you.
All right, good morning again. My name is Mark Batista, President of Citywide Building Maintenance. We've been here. We thank you guys for your support and having us as your vendor. We really appreciate it. One of the things we want you guys to know right off the bat is that you guys are a priority to us, okay? We've been here for a long time. We know this is a very particular situation. So we're taking measures in our office to make sure that we have supplies for you, we have staffing for you, we have the right remedies for this situation, okay? We're not accepting, this has made the whole cleaning world go crazy. All of a sudden it's cool to clean. So I can't even tell you the amount of calls we turned away yesterday because we're not accepting new business right now from one-time business, nothing like that. We're keeping our efforts focused on our customers, and Woodland is very much a priority. Talking about what we're instructing our teams to change their gloves more often through the shift, and when they're changing their gloves to wash their hands when they're doing that, okay? We're slowing down production rates to try and do a more detailed cleaning of these rooms when we go through there, but now that the school is going to be closed, when we come through here, as we talked about, disinfecting is not cleaning. When we're cleaning, we're removing soil. When we're disinfecting, we're killing germs. So that's the difference. You have to first remove the soil, and then we need to disinfect the surfaces, okay? We're swapping out regular disinfectants with hospital-grade virucidal disinfectants. These are disinfectants that kill viruses that live on surfaces throughout all of our facilities. And that's a measure that we're doing at a top level for everyone, okay? Also, we want to really key in on cleaning nurses' offices and nurses' stations in all of our accounts, but of course especially here. As Dr. Swoboda talked about, Victory sprayers is the newest technology, maybe not the newest technology, but the best technology on the market right now that we're seeing. And thank goodness that we actually ordered these prior to this happening, because they're back ordered until June.
We have an example
We have another 2 coming in, and we have 2 backpack units coming in as well. The benefits to using the sprayer is the sprayer's even.
I'll be nice and disinfected.
So the sprayers evenly coat the surfaces we're treating by positively charging the solution in the machine. So as we move through a classroom, and why we ask for the desks to be in a row is because as you move through a classroom and you cover the surfaces, you're getting a larger surface area with this dissipation out of this sprayer. The solution then clings to the negatively charged surfaces rather than something like a bleach where it would run right off. Victory Sprayers emits the fine mist which dries streak-free. And streak-free is important because we tried a number of different products. It's really not it's really not the sprayer that makes it streak-free, it's the product that we're using. So we're using a virucidal disinfectant called HALT, which is manufactured by Spartan. And we went through a number of things in our warehouse and testing and had to see, because we clean offices as well, and the last thing anyone wants to come into is, some guy going haywire on his desk and he's got dark furniture. And we've seen it with some of these other chemicals. The other thing with disinfecting is the object is not to come back and wipe. If you're wiping away the work you just did. So there's a 10-minute dwell time on the products that we're using, this HALT product. So as we come through and we spray these surfaces and we come through this room, the object is let that room dry, move on to the next room. This is done with a 2 to 3 person team most of the time. So the process is first person opens the door, turns on the lights, pulls out the chairs if they're not attached to the desks. Okay? Because as we go through, we want to hit the high traffic touch points of the chairs too, because the children love to touch. My son's 7, he touches everything. Don't look at the walls in our house. It's terrible. So as we're going through spraying surfaces, this product is landing on all the surfaces. We're giving the 10-minute dwell time, and that person is then leaving that room. And as the first person who's opening the room and turning on the lights, he's coming back to the first room and wiping up any residual. We're seeing some residual on like seats, just because where the butt seat is. You get a little bit of puddle. So we're wiping that away, pushing the chairs in, close the lights, close the door, and move on.
It's an excellent explanation for all of us.
Yeah, very, yeah.
The other thing that these sprayers allow us is to save our workers' hands. If we have to go through with spray bottles and do this, it's really taxing on someone's hands. Can you imagine spraying desks in 600 classrooms? I mean, my finger would fall off. So this is a one-time treatment that we're using, and then a lot of our customers are electing to do it once a month right now. Okay? What we're seeing from other districts is additional manpower, additional cleanings, and initial cleanings with the electrostatic sprayer. As far as PPE goes, we're coming in with gloves, masks, and in some situations, full suits. I know we had a case yesterday where we sent out one of our teams, and it was an emergency situation for a customer that we do business with, but we don't actually service the branch where these people was in a bank. And we had to go in there full gear. Now, non-confirmed case, but anybody hears flu, and they're running down. Okay. As I talk, person 1 unlocks the doors, pulls the chairs out. Person 2 spraying down all the touch points in the room. Person 3 wiping down the surfaces, locking the room up, and securing things.
Excellent. And in our board meeting on Thursday, there'll be a report about working with Citywide in our contract, and know that report might change based upon this new crisis. And when Lori and the team look into that for next year, there might be some changes to it.
One of the important things about what we're talking about here today is the cleaning and the disinfecting, because we have done this where customers come back and they didn't want to do the cleaning first. No, it's cost prohibitive. It takes too much money, it takes too much time, whatever the case. But when they're coming back, the disinfection works, but they're coming back and maybe people are now moving everything on their desk. And I don't know about you, but if I move my computer around, for sure there's going to be some dust and things like that. So it's really important that we spend the time to do the detail cleaning first, come through, and now with the school being closed, I think a good plan would be to do the detail cleaning before we do the application of the spraying first,
We agree.
and move forward from there. And really get you guys ready and up and going for when we come back. And hopefully that will be right after spring break was originally set to go for recess.
Let's hope so.
Anyone have any questions?
for
That
Mark?
was a great presentation.
Can you
Mark?
come to my house?
Can I come to your house? We can do that. We can do that too.
I'll talk to you offline about doing something. Your explanation was outstanding. Maybe we can get creative about you doing like a mini YouTube video that we can work with Brooke on, because you sharing what you just did is what I'm hearing in my neighborhood, and I think will reassure our staff and our parents. So thank you for that. Joe has-
I have a couple of different questions. What else do you think that we need to do? I mean,
That's a great question.
yeah,
Yeah.
what else, and what else
For
can we do?
cleaning?
For cleaning,
Yeah, I
yes.
think it's really important that when first of all, when people leave, that they take what they need with them, so it's out of the way and that they
Yeah.
have it at home. Because we really, it's an indefinite return time.
Right.
And then second, that when they come back, they feel very safe coming back to school.
Yes.
I'm sure the YouTube video idea would help with that. But then, are we taking the steps that we need to take in order to be sure that those things happen in terms of the cleaning and disinfecting, and then long-term moving forward? So, what else do we?
Once a month. The other districts are doing this once a month. Are we going to do this once a month?
We can, that's what our meeting about is, today is about. We have our initial strategies that we had the last 2 days, but certainly, Mark, feel free to share other things you would think about or recommend for the board to discuss.
So, at first crack, really what we'd like to see is a ramp up in the manpower to disinfect surfaces on a more frequent basis. This all comes down to manpower, and the people that work for us, they're incredible people, and they've been really consistent to be here at the district for us, but I know that they're going to need help because of the size of the district. We want to give them that help. And going through, and maybe one thing that we're a big proponent of is rotation schedules. So, per school, we could put a schedule together to say, okay, in this school, we're going to do the room, let's say we want to disinfect, let's say 3 times, whatever the case may be. Okay, so let's say there's 5 classrooms in the school. So classroom 1 going to get done Monday, 2 Tuesday, 3 Wednesday, so on and so forth. And then you color code those, and then we make that happen. We put that schedule in place. But that all comes down to manpower, just because, as we're trying to clean for health now, as opposed to cleaning for look, it takes on a whole new perception.
I do think we would need some type of regular schedule of disinfection once school returns, because I think we know the virus is still going to be in the community somewhere. Kids are going to come back to school and contaminate surfaces, so some type of schedule of disinfection until we're fairly certain that community spread, and who knows how long that will be.
Even if we're to do this where we have our normal crews coming through on a weekly basis, okay, we're ramping up the manpower for the normal crews, but let's say once a month we have like a dedicated weekend where let's say we do one school a weekend, just until, okay, fingers crossed this is going to go away, okay, that's the goal. But right now, everything we do should be proactive rather than reactive, and let's keep our students in the seats, and let's keep the schools open.
Hear, hear. And that's what Lauren, Chris and I were talking, that what you'll see in your board packet this weekend that we prepared last week is already outdated, because these increased disinfection for next year. What you'll see in April will be different than what's in your board packet, because this has educated us all that we need to refocus some of our priorities on cleaning and disinfection, just from a district governance level. So you'll see more next month, and we want to speak a bit too about
It's
our
not,
buses.
it's not just going to be the buildings that we're going to be cleaning.
Yeah.
Currently, we have Clorox wipes that the drivers, after each of their routes, will wipe down the buses, but we felt that a deep disinfectant electrostatic clean was necessary for the buses as well. So we've spoken with Citywide, and
Yeah, we're going to put that in place for all large and small buses, transportation. We just want to be as cautious as possible. We want to be as proactive as possible. So,
as I say, especially
and if we want to do the buses on rotation or once a month too, that's something that we should think about doing until.
And the buses are a critical piece because the buses service each of the buildings.
Yeah.
So
Shared with everybody.
And little kids do a lot on the bus.
Yes, they do. Do the board members have other questions or suggestions for Mark? And then I'm going to summarize what I heard. So we have.
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment about commending your company on your commitment to current customers. In this climate, you could probably make a lot of money with new customers, so I applaud that.
I have friends in the business that are going out. I have friends in the business that are going out there and they're doing everything they can, and it's like, they may be a little bit smaller of a company and whatnot, but our customers are our priority, and you guys certainly are at the very top of that list.
Thank you very much. So I have as our summary under cleaning, increasing our frequency of the cleaning and disinfection, adding monthly, including our buses, and setting up the rotation schedule. And we'll flush out more of the ideas, but one school per weekend. So those are the themes that I heard and saw nods on board concurrence to get that plan going for the rest of the year and then into next school year. Is that
More than
just to check? Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll continue with our plan where we're at right now.
Do we want to talk a little about food?
I don't know if we want to talk about food or ed services.
Ed services.
Let me grab a cup of coffee. Can we take a quick break?
Do we want to take like a 5-minute?
Just a stretch
Or
break.
stretch break?
Stretch break, sure.
So then, that's the resources, then food.
Yeah.
Okay, and then community.
Yeah.
And how about under resources after Steve will do Donna?
Yeah, I'll go talk to
Okay, great. Yep. We, folks, we really do have a premier team like Adam. You should see that everybody was on this. Hopefully you guys feel like we've got a good handle on the plan.
yes.
Okay, good. Good.
Yes.
Sweet.
I was like, who is this? I'm like,
Like you're looking at them.
I need to add you in.
I'd call you, but I never know if you're in the country or not. So
I'm back.
back.
For a while.
And you're probably not going anywhere
Yeah,
anytime
for
soon.
a while. Good thing.
Oh, save my baby! Save my baby!
Be a good day to just be able to stay home, focus on that.
Okay, we should get together sometime.
Are you gonna be in this week?
Yeah, I'm free.
I'll call you then. Now you know who my
No, yeah, I got you. I was like, I thought I had you in my phone. That's so weird.
I'll call you.
Okay. Yeah, let's do
You're funny, Don.
Which is not hard to find.
Hey, no, thank you, I appreciate it. So, okay, thanks. Wow. Stay healthy with the, what about your staff? Any?
Nothing yet.
Thank you so much. Thanks for meeting with us yesterday morning, and thank you for everything. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Yeah, because we said, can you start premiering this weekend? And he said, you're trying to get. He said, because everybody wants to. You know, which I do. This is the best result out there. I love that. Yeah, I love that. I know. I love that. I love you. I love you too, Laura.
She must have been very busy this week.
Oh, yeah. How about you?
Oh, yeah. Court systems are still open.
For
Which,
now.
For now. Well, the problem is that, you go to court and you're in a teeny little room with 100 people from all over the place, locked in there.
I hope they are using citywide or somebody to disinfect.
They are, but it's hard to, there's just so much. And then you got the people in the jail, and that's just a big, sleeping on top of each other.
Yeah. And that's a transient population, so they're bringing stuff in and out.
Yeah.
It's not like it's a
Homeless
confined
people,
community.
drug addicts, and people don't take care of themselves.
Right. So they, hopefully they're taking the right precautions.
Because stuff goes through there like,
Yes.
Not that much bad, but.
We did something wrong. Wow.
We were talking about personal.
We have these open mics here. Okay. You'd be surprised how many people watch too, because I went online and looked, and it's like, a lot of people.
Really?
Oh yeah, it gets big viewership.
Oh. Funny.
I'm not even awake at this.
I either wear heels or tennis shoes. You know me. There is no in between. I stayed in the office last night till
Diana?
10:30, reconciling all of the stuff we had sent out. So, making sure it's ready to, because we're gonna push out again.
Let me give you a different direction. When we're at like a special board meeting like this, we should be pausing the live stream when we're on break. Okay. So if we take another break, we need to pause. Okay. Okay? We don't pause during the government meetings, we don't take breaks. Thank you, Lori.
Yes. I forgot what I was gonna tell you.
So we were going to move on to educational resources.
Okay.
And then we'll go through food and community access and community supports are the last three that we've got.
Okay. We'll turn it, everyone back, gentlemen. Okay, we're back. Okay, I will turn it back
Okay.
over to Joy, Lori.
Yep, sure. So as I said earlier this week, our teachers, our administrators, our leaders have all been working on resources for our families and children to have before, in our preparedness phase, if this were to occur. So before we knew if this was going to happen, they had been working to pull some things together in order to meet the various needs of our students, not only various grade levels of our students, but also our students some that have access at home to the internet, some that don't have access at home to the internet. So I'm going to have Dr. Thomas and Dr. Vandenbroek give you a brief update on where we're at right now and where we're going this week with that.
Good morning, Dr. Thomas, and this is
Dr. Vandenbroek?
So we, as I think as everyone mentioned here, things are changing so quickly. So we definitely spend a lot of time trying to adjust plans with new information coming in. But I think one important piece that we had to keep in mind, while some other districts may have different demographic sets, different populations, we really have to keep equity in mind when we're doing work here at Woodland. And one of the issues that brings up is nearly 40% of our kids are in a low-income home or a home that we call disinvested environments, so pieces where they need additional supports and services, or they're going home to families where both the parents are all working hourly wages, can't be home with kids. So we need to prepare materials that are independent, that kids can work on, and that have to have some level of paper base in our lower grades because our kids just are not bringing home devices like that consistently. So we also had to prepare for what about we have some kids in the upper grade levels that perhaps their Chromebook had broken or that it's out for repair. What are we going to do with that? So we tried to prepare a wide range of things, but we focused on these things. And from 4th through 8th grade, we're going to be focusing on digital resources. And through EC through 3rd grade, we're going to focus on paper-based resources, but have the support of a digital device in 3rd grade. Our 3rd graders are pretty experienced with Chromebooks in the classroom, so we figured that was a good blend. We also had to really consider all the different kinds of support systems, that everything from our special needs students to our L learners. So we needed to really kind of consider all those different pieces. And from that, we developed really what we call a distance learning plan, which you have a brief copy of. I was going to try to pull up an example of it there. I wasn't able to log in, unfortunately, in Google right now. And maybe I can find a way of showing you an example of that. Yeah, but we have a great team that came together really over the last 24 hours and developed a wide range of resources. We had some specific goals. Our goals were we want to prepare about something that's independent. As I mentioned, EC through 3, we want to make sure it's paper-based, so you can bring it home, and we were able to get those pieces, those papers, and those activities with kids when they left here on Friday, based upon the information basically when we made a decision around noon.
Yep.
And I really want to shout out to our O&F staff here. I want to shout out to the schools because there was a lot of literally like a truck waiting for the papers to be copied to run them over to schools to get them into that kid's hands before they left at the end of the day on Friday. So there was a lot of last-minute coordination to get this done.
Great job.
Yeah, that team, everyone worked really hard to get that done. So we feel like we have that all set and ready to go. Yeah, I know, I'm going to run some
So take it down.
Google doesn't like us today. So in any case, we want to prepare. Now we asked our teams, and this is mostly specialists, and on Monday we'll have our teacher teams review those materials, add on additional pieces. Some of the things that we want to add, we focus mostly on literacy and math, but in the lower grades we did do all 4 cores up at the middle school level. So there's activities and resources, independent work, all that through each of the 4 cores up there. But we want to, on Monday, also start to bring in some of our arts, right? There's plenty of things kids can do within the art arena, within the music, PE arena, just to stay fit, just to kind of stay active and moving. So we want to certainly bring in those staff. And we want to let our classroom teachers really review the materials that were prepared by the specialists so that they have some input on that. Again, given the time, we couldn't stop things and say, okay, we're going to pull classroom teachers out of classrooms to go build material. So we needed to have specialists do this at the centralized level. So we did a lot of that, and I think what we came up with is a good range. I think the other piece that I do want to mention here is e-learning a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, you may hear the term e-learning. And in Illinois, e-learning has a very specific definition. And it's something that, while for many, that might be an option, but for us, it's not. And the reason is again, we can't guarantee that our kids are going home to a supervised environment that's going to have a machine or a computer or full access of a device. And that's really what you need is kind of a baseline for e-learning. We'll get close to a lot of the elements of e-learning, no doubt about it. And we have resources and materials, and we have things that can be done somewhat independently. So I think we've done a lot to get as close as you can to the e-learning piece, but for the state of Illinois definition, we are not e-learning. So we're calling it distance learning, and that's what we continue to say. Oh, you do distance learning.
Steve, let me,
Yes.
So two pieces, one that Brooke mentioned to us today from a communication standpoint. What we're hearing with our parents is we know what e-learning is, and we know what the media is saying, but for our parents, they want to know, are we going to have educational resources? What are the expectations for my child, and what does access look like? So that's some of what we will be communicating. I do want to give a shout out to our union. Our union is coming together with us, and we're meeting Tuesday morning to talk about a plan going forward about developing more of the distance learning and what role teachers can play in the future. So we just want to assure the board and the community that we are in those cooperative pieces.
So Steve's able, is this on? Yes, okay. Steve's able to pull some of the stuff up that we did, but when I talk about, like, it could almost make me tear up, the power of what these people did. Literally, they were at a conference, they came back. By 1 o'clock we were started. They were tasked with get grade level specific activities that children can go home and do with their families, or if they're staying with grandma or a neighbor or whomever, somebody could jump in and do this. Then I had a speech path, the OT, a PT, and the assistive technology facilitator to come over and do it through the special education lens. And with preschool, we just did activities, because so much about preschool and early childhood you learn through play. Mm-hmm. So they came over and just made these amazing things ready. We do have some online resources, but some of our lower grades, especially in our low incidence population, it is truly about engaging learning through play. So we had to do some of that through that lens, and then when we talk about some of our very low functioning children that are nonverbal, we had to think through that lens too. So the team really came together, and you can see through gross motor things, fine motor things, speech things that families can do with their children or whoever the caregivers might be. And so a lot of our pre-K through third grade information went home in paper packets, as well as all the way up through our our functional life skills program and our structured learning autism programs all the way through middle school. We had activities designed. For me, as far as, we have quite a few kids that are in out-of-district placements as well as CEDAW, so I've communicated with all those programs all week, as well as my fellow peers, about what's going on with their students. Every private school that we have a partnership with, they all have some type of distant learning going on, as well as CEDAW does too. Our next hurdle is, the whole state's impacted in the same way, is about facilitating IEP meetings and how we're going to do that. Right now we're distance learning, so we're considered no students or anything. I will be investigating that along with my peers as we move forward. I know on Monday we're going to try and do some IEPs just by phone conference. Just to get a couple of them in, but since all schools are shut down in us, all our timelines and deadlines that our markers that we have to hit,
that's a really good point.
They are suspended. We also had to look at our early intervention. You have birth through 3 services. Our responsibility is to evaluate those children by their 3rd birthday. We do have the option as school districts to use their IFSP, which is their individualized family service plan, to work as the IEP when they come in and evaluate when they get here. Fortunately for us, we only have 1 student that's going to fall within this 2-week period that we're down, that's going to fall into this 3rd birth date that we have to hit. But if early intervention through the health department is shut down, all those timelines stop. But the 1 student impacted for us, when we just look at his paperwork, we can just use the IFSP because it just looks like a speech delay, not to minimize just. But so anyway, there's a lot of moving parts. Steve and I have tag teamed, and I just can't even talk about the power of those people coming in and literally turning this around in less than 24 hours. It was an all hands on forces effort, and was all specialists. These were not frontline classroom teachers because we didn't want to pull them out. And they did all this, and we got it translated into Spanish, and before kids went home yesterday, it was in their hands.
And Steve, and Donna, didn't we also, what did we send home with our kindergarten or
So we
primary
also sent
students?
some other materials.
crayons,
and
Play-Doh.
Play-Doh, things like that. So we try to also, we ask, classroom teachers, think about any kids that don't have any materials at home, please just send them home with like a pencil bag of materials or things that they can use so that they have something at home if they wouldn't normally have it there. So.
And then we stand ready to, depending upon how long this goes, to mail things home, just as Steve said, that equity lens. Steve, can you pull up the one slide you had about what's not canceled and that
Oh, yeah, sure.
fifth grade and show that?
Yeah, fifth grade,
This is beautiful. Just take a moment and.
At the bottom half of the screen.
Do you want to context that out, or like?
I think, as everyone was going through, they were talking about, this is a difficult situation. We talked to the team about that. We're in an unknown situation, and there's actually even more in the social emotional. There's a social emotional page that we have on there as well to really talk through. We haven't, one thing maybe that would be good in our future communications, I'm just thinking about it now off the cuff, is maybe how to talk to your kids about this.
We have some of those. We'll talk about that. We have some of those things
We'll talk about
coming.
that on Monday.
Yeah, we have some information from the American Psychologists Association of exactly how to
One
help.
other thing, Dr. Casey, had mentioned it. Some of our families and children that are struggling, as we know, mental health and trauma has been a big issue in not only our school but across the country. I am gathering lists from each school to see if there are certain families, children that we need to do a check-in because we will be here. So that is something else that we're just trying to gather because each school, are tier 3 type families that we're doing RAP services for. So each school is sending me a list. I have one so far, and I would assume by Monday I would have the rest, and we'll make a plan moving forward, how we need to make some type of contact, whether it's phone call, check-in. We haven't decided all that yet, but we are getting a running list of those really tier 3 RAP type families that we need to follow up with.
Great job.
Any questions?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So, I think this is great. We all agree we've been doing some pretty good work.
Right.
But I think that we are assuming, as we should, that parents are home with these kids. What about the children?
Some of the things that I did when I directed specifically like the speech and the OT and the PT and the assistive technology facilitator, I said, look at some of the activities you're developing through the lens if it's a grandma watching the kids.
What if it's a big brother?
Right. So some of the activities, even if you're practicing counting and you pull out macaroni beans and you count in groups of 5s or 10s, I said, think of that through that kind of lens. Where, and along with Steve, a lot of the things that we tried to do to develop were skills that were independent. Right. Because we're not going to be doing direct instruction by this, so more independently driven skills.
I think
independence was a big push, and again, we talked about we really talked about equity within access for our kids, and so I think we really tried to keep that as a lens by which we produced this work. So independence had to be a big key piece of it. There are times we'll be partners, but mostly it's independent work.
And the key piece for us, as Brooke was mentioning, is what are we communicating with our families about expectations? And we're looking this as a distance learning plan, but it's really about access to resources. But our parents and our children need to understand it's not what's happening in other districts. They aren't going to be graded. Nothing's going to be counted against them. So all those pieces to try to ease their minds and their hearts, that these are tools for learning engagement, not replacing schools. So all those pieces are what we're working on this weekend and making sure that it's clear for our families. I don't, Brooke, if you want to.
Well,
I'm getting emails back from the communication that went out. What exactly does this mean? What should we be doing? If we're using emergency days, does this mean we won't have to make these, or that we will have to make these days up? And so that's the next piece, is trying to explain to parents what they should be doing while we're closed.
Well, let me make my question a little more simpler.
Okay.
So I know that during this time, some people are off work. But I also know that there are a bunch of parents who have to go in. And there is no grandparent. there is no one there, and we're assuming that they are responsibly placing their kids, but their backs may be against the wall. So I guess my concern is, yes, are we making it clear to them that this is not going to be great at work? Because if Timmy's at home watching his 5-year-old and he's only 9, he's watching his 5-year-old sister, they're not going to play with macaroni because they might not have macaroni at their disposal to play with. So I want us to be realistic and also some of the things that we are asking of people, because if you're quarantining, and not saying that everybody is, but no one has macaroni to play with.
Right, and I think our lens was, these are activities they can do at home. It is not, and as Brooke said, this is not graded, it's not gonna go toward a report card, but it's just activities. It's like having an extended snow day, and people are looking for things for their children to do. It's
Yes,
to keep,
exactly.
keep skills that they have, to keep them engaged, but we didn't look at it through the lens of putting a burden on any family member or any caregiver. We were very, deliberate. Thank you. Deliberate in the activities that we developed, so it doesn't become burdensome, but it becomes more practice of skill.
Okay, Joe.
Yeah, I just wanted to.
Go ahead.
Can you clarify so that, I mean, not just, maybe some folks at the table or people watching, like, the difference between e-learning and distance learning? Because I think it's a language issue.
I agree.
And as long as, if we can clearly define those terms, then folks will have a better understanding.
Right, so a goal with what we're trying to do here with distance learning, we're calling it distance learning, is have some continuity to the grade level outcomes that we have. So we've developed by grade level, by area, by different subject areas, by programs. We develop those activities. Versus e-learning, which is basically like, we're going to continue what we did on Friday on Monday. That's e-learning. So you're continuing exactly the content that was taught, but more in a remote, more in a very attendance-driven manner. Kids that are in e-learning, we have to be on for, I think it's still 5 hours. They have to come in and sign in the morning. And when you think about that, I'm not sure. I mean, I've seen some plans, but let's think about a kindergartner. Think exactly to, Mrs. Amen's point, which is that if there isn't any support at home, kindergartners need a lot of support. There's a lot of hand raising. There's a lot of questions. There's a lot, I don't know what to do. I need help. That's something why we don't think e-learning is our best plan, especially for our youngest kids, especially in the situations where you talk about where it may be very limited kind of guidance. It may be the brother that still slept until 10 o'clock that day, but might be able to help out a little bit later. So we wanted something to continue the goals that we had set up and the outcomes we have for the grade level, but not necessarily make it a burden to where you have to check in for those 5 hours. Otherwise, it doesn't count towards attendance, and you're not continuing what we just taught the other day. So,
and I think that your definition that you stated at the beginning of your presentation, that may need to go out in an FAQ if you haven't done that already, Brooke. But because, to your point, e-learning is a term that is used by the state of Illinois. It has to be approved by the State Board of Ed and so on and so forth. But what we're trying to do is provide resources to keep our students stimulated throughout this process. So I think if we could just explain, e-learning is a definition by the State Board of Education. It has to be approved curriculum. We're not there. We're providing stimulation.
In the why. In the why it works for us, why educational resources are important for our mixed community where almost 40% of our children are in free and reduced, where they don't have access to that support. So we have to make sure we're very clear that these are educational resources. So,
but ultimately, we want to get to e-learning,
and we're starting to talk about it.
And you guys, I know, are doing a great job getting there. But I think that's a point we want to make too. We want to get there, but we're not there. So we're working through the equity issues.
How much of our resources are we ready to dedicate at this point to that end instead of things that might be more immediate? Do kids have food? Are kids hearing a voice during the day if they're home alone for an extended period of time? Someone reaching out to them. Just the way that we prioritize what we're doing, I think.
I have heard of other districts doing something, again, on the distance learning side, not on the official e-learning side, but, having, and this is something we'll talk on Monday, maybe we can have videos of our teachers reading books to kids, getting some of that continuation.
Would be so
That's,
great.
that's a great way to continue that without necessarily being, quote, e-learning, but really helping to kind of continue that, those pieces and that, at least that, hey, connection with our classroom teacher while we're out there.
So, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Steve. So I teach on the college level, and one of the things that we are doing is we're using Zoom. And for like our kids who already have Chromebooks, we record our lectures. So maybe, them reading a book or something. Because I know we can't help it, but I do worry about these kids being at home, like Joe said, alone, maybe not having interaction. And that's not the case for everyone. But if we have just a few who sink into that.
Right, and I think the important distinction is that we started with that lens rather than working with the majority are fine. But we started with how do we make sure that we're reaching the kids that may not have that support, may be really self-guided at home, need that independence. We started with that lens and built the plans rather than saying, well, they should have a computer at home and we're just going to go forward with something like this. So I think that's a big distinction that we try to address in our planning.
Other questions
The
from
only other
board
thing I
members?
wanted to add, Carla, was we talked about, in April, we'll be meeting as a board to talk about the starting right with Illinois State Board of Ed and then our planning in the future. And I added on there lessons learned from this. And one of those lessons was looking at our strategic plan. Is there anything we want to re-examine, maybe take off a priority that we're already doing and put e-learning or something like that in there in order to be, use our manpower in a different way based upon what we're learning from this.
And I think Woodland, our district, we have not a more difficult job, but you have to look at not only, like you're saying, the families that the children may be home by themselves, or even a single child home by themselves, using these resources, but you also have to consider the kid that has all the resources and plan for both, and those in the middle. So I commend you guys for thinking through the equity piece of that, because it's not just making sure, the people with the most have it or the people with the least have it. You got to look at the whole spectrum of our community, and we have a huge spectrum.
Yes, we do.
So.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think one thing that, as we, we're going through, one piece that we hope to add then on Monday would be some of the more of those advanced and enrichment and challenging work from some of our staff that weren't able to join us in that team development. So again, we'll look to add those pieces in to really help extend during this, at least this 2-week timeline. And I don't know if I mentioned again, our goal was kind of, anywhere from 7 to 10 hours of activity work that you could do. So that's, kind of a 2-week, a week to 2-week time period. Enough to really engage kids, and certainly you can go back and do it again. In fact, I just went through a couple of the resources from our technology integration specialist. Some of the digital citizenship work is great, a lot of great activities, something that's really engaging, but really it's got a good message to it, a lot of gamification kind of pieces. So I think there's a lot of great things in there.
And then looking forward to hearing more about how, after you guys meet next week, how you can engage students from this social, emotional perspective.
We're going to talk about that this morning.
Okay, and then how you're integrating the arts into this and the enrichment piece as you're getting that going. That's going to be really important. Thank you.
Carla beat me to my comment. I was going to say that even in a pandemic, the equity lens has been at the forefront, so that's really cool.
And I think because these are unprecedented times, normally when we're looking at, let's say, e-learning or access to internet, I know, and we'll be putting this out on Monday, but Comcast is now given 2 months free internet. So we'll be.
Come on, that is so wonderful.
To any family, any low-income family that needs it, that qualify for free and reduced lunch. We purposely didn't put that out on Friday because we wanted to focus our message, but we will be putting that out as one of our resources on Monday.
And how to sign up.
And how to sign up and to do all that information. But to that point, normally we would direct our families to, let's say, other areas that have the library or other places, and those are closed right now. So these times are not normal times where we could say, here's what we would normally do if you needed access to internet. But we are going to try and find other resources for them. But, so many other agencies daily are stepping up and saying, here's how we can help, here's how we can help. And we're going to continue to make sure our families know that.
And then, the dark side of that, reminding them about cybersecurity when they're online. So that's really good. Wow, that is wonderful. Other questions?
Yeah, I have one more question.
Yes.
The governor yesterday said that, announced that there would be a school administrator on duty at each school in case of an emergency. Can you talk about that?
Sure. So we are working through some of those pieces. On Monday we will, but right now, our plan is all our administrators are here pending their vacations and things that are already spent for spring break. We are fortunate. We are a large district. We have a great, strong team of 35 people. The one part of the governor's piece that we do not agree with, and that guidance, is that being able for children to be dropped off at school, those pieces that were coming up. But our plan for the next 2 weeks is we are having people here. It's a work day for us. It's a work day for our principals within their normal schedules. Now, depending on how long this goes and when we may need to go to remote, that will change weekly as these dynamics change. But for next week, that's where we are. Lori and I are advising those so we can do all our work with planning, that we have a certain set of hours for our district office next week, let's say 8 a.m. to 3, and that we advertise it so the community knows this is when pieces and people are available, but the business goes on. Payroll goes on, everything keeps going. So that's our initial piece. Lori,
I think just two pieces to that. One is our Champions program before and after school is going to be, is closed because we don't have school. But secondly, they've been wonderful, just like our other providers working with us, and they're going to have their Early Learning Center open this week for families that want it or need it. So, for example, Monday, our teachers are here, and so they would need childcare. Again, if families choose that they don't want their children in that environment this week, over spring break, they're normally open. They're going to close, so they could do the deep clean that's with Citywide with us, and then they're like we're doing. They're playing it by ear about what's best for those for the little ones and what's best. But they have 70% of their families that are working other places, whether they're in banks or other that need to get to work. So we're working with them on that. The one piece that Joy and I were struggling with the governor's message was because many of the, let's say, really smaller districts in Illinois, they may have one or two students that applies to, where we have 5,600 students. So it's really not written for a school district of 5,600 to say if you need to drop your child off, drop your child off.
300 people do it.
Because then you're back to where we started.
Right.
And
so
you can't get the school.
So that's our and the same thing, we were talking with schools that have 100% free and reduced lunch yesterday, and they would have 100% of their students dropped off. So I think every district has to take that guidance and do what's best for their community.
Yeah, keep in mind, it's guidance for us. We're our own jurisdiction. We take guidance from the state, we take guidance from the municipalities, from the county, but we're our own jurisdiction. So that's that. And we have to take that information in, and our administrators analyze it and come up with a plan that works for our district. Because they're not considering our district.
Right, exactly.
They don't know our district.
Right.
So we have to do what's best for our community and our families. Okay.
What we'd like to move to, thank you both very much. What we'd like to move to next is access to food and nutrition. So Chris will be able to explain what we already have in place with respect to our free and reduced lunch students. Much of these are still concepts. They are ebbing and flowing over the last 48 hours, and then Laura and I can share some of what we talked about at Lake County Superintendents with respect to access to food, inter-district collaborations, pieces like that. So, Chris.
All right, so we operate under the National School Lunch Program, which has a lot of red tape, but fortunately the state has been cutting through some of that tape and freeing up some things for school districts to do that don't necessarily qualify for one of the programs that allows us to serve food. Under the National School Lunch Program, if we do not have school, technically, we're not allowed to be part of that program. What they have done is they have now offered what is called Seamless Summer to all of the districts. So we've already actually filled out a waiver. We've turned it into the state. The state has been fantastic. We've spoken with them. They have said, even if they can't get to the waiver, because we're assuming that there's probably going to be about 800 waivers that are going to the state before they review it, they said just operate the plan as we've set forth. What a seamless summer technically does, in its traditional form, is it allows you to serve food to not just the free and reduced staff, but anyone under the age of 18. Typically what happens there is you actually have to set up a location, and everybody is supposed to come and congregate in that location and eat the food, clearly because of what's happening now. They've waived that as well. So how we're going to operate going forward, well, there's a couple of ideas and a couple of things that we've been investigating. We've already spoken with Arbor because they have to change the style of food that they make. And we're probably going to wind up operating out of one kitchen, and then while we go through the cleaning phase, we might have to have Arbor transfer to an additional kitchen. So there are going to be workers in the school buildings while we are going through the food service program. At first, at minimum, and how we're probably going to wind up starting is we're going to operate a drive-up, and the food, because it has to be a little bit different, you can't make quesadillas and have them sit out for a long time. It's probably going to be more of a grab-and-go style. We've spoken with the state about how much food we are allowed to give out, and it is multiple days at the same time. So a family could come up and pick up maybe, depending on how much Arbor can make, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, maybe even 5 days. It's going to be a little bit touch and go, I would say, at the beginning, because we don't know how many families will show up. This is not just offered to Woodland students. It is anybody under the age of 18 can get food. We would like to make sure that our students do get the food that they need. So there's going to be a little bit of trial at the beginning, and there might be some food that the district will wind up paying for, but might not be used if we produce too much and we don't get the response.
Another piece we're investigating to tag on to that we talked about, the Lake County Superintendent says, whether you call it Woodland Eats or Uber Eats, where we need to have a multi-phase. See if people can come here, but we all know that families need to get the food to them. So that this week we're developing plans. Where can we go in our communities? We have our administrators, we have cars, we have buses. If they can't come to us, how can we get the food to those families in our communities? So that still is being developed, but those are conceptually the pieces we're working with.
Yeah, we're looking at remote sites potentially where we could gather that might be a little bit easier for parents to come, because going door to door to all the students might be a little bit more difficult, but if we could get it into the communities at least, that would be one of the
Like
goals.
some of the community centers.
Yeah, community centers, places
Apartment
where,
complexes.
absolutely.
Okay.
Churches,
Churches.
Yeah,
Oh,
churches.
Great idea, great idea.
So-
Partner with the churches, they could probably help cook some of the food.
One
Well, we-
of the other guidelines is that in doing so, there has to be, you have to target free and reduced students. So obviously, anybody under the age of 18 is allowed to come in and get a meal. All meals are free as well. It does not matter whether or not you are free and reduced. All meals will be free. But we do have to find a way to target, and that's probably, when we're looking at the delivery options and the remote sites, would be a good way of actually targeting.
And Brooke will be obviously communicating it out, but we'll be calling all of our homeless families and personally calling them or making sure that every one of them are aware of, and if they say, they can't come here, then we'll be figuring out how to get it to them this week. So those are some of the jobs that, like, for example, that's something my secretary would be doing this week, is reaching out to those people to see.
Communication is going to be key. We want to make sure that everybody understands where food is going to be available. It has to be available from a set time. And if we can do breakfast and lunch together, whether or not, doing that sometime mid-morning would make sense, so people don't have to, if it is a remote site, have to leave their residence, on more than one occasion. That would be fantastic. This is due for Arbor as well. So, in my previous world, we ran a seamless summer, and we didn't know how many people were going to show up, and it wound up being very minimal. So we're just going to kind of take it as it goes and try to figure out, how to make sure that we prepare the food that we need to service the community.
I think, and Joy and I will be talking about some of the other supports that we're putting in place, but the other support is, it's kind of like a Mr. Rogers saying, but there's, in this, there's always helpers. And we've had so many of our teachers reach out to us and say, I want to help, how can I help? We just got something this morning from the Gurney Park District that said, we want to help, how can we help? Our PTA, I know, will want to help. So we're looking at, is there something else we can be doing in addition to this? So this is, there's other supplies that our families will be needing. So that's something else that we're working on if we need to do in addition to this, drive up, get what you need. All the people drop off donations one day, the next day we target and let people come and get them. Things like that. We were saying this morning, sometimes people say, boy, Woodland's such a big school district. I'm afraid to have my child go to this large school district. And in times like this, we are so lucky because we have thousands of people that want to help, and we have so many people that are on staff that are trying to help. So in these times, it really is such a benefit to be in this situation because we're all able to put all hands on deck and help those that need the assistance right now. So it's really very fortunate right now. So that's something that you'll be hearing more information about is additional help besides what we're able to do with the food service.
Questions, board? Comments?
I got a comment.
Okay.
I am thoroughly impressed. It's not often that I'm like, but Woodland Eats, I mean, just the amount of things that you all had to think about in such a short time span is amazing to me. And it seems like every detail, from the cleaning to the feeding to how they're going to get the food, their social needs have all been addressed. Even if it's not, what every person would personally do, look at how many kids we have to service. So I'm impressed.
Well, keep in mind, now, Dr. Casey has been invested in preparedness for several years. I mean, she's given presentations on preparedness. She's very modest about it, but she's right.
And, but when you think about actually making things happen, it can sometimes be scattered, it can be unorganized, and it cannot be seamless. And we have hit all of those. So we may have some little bumps along the way. Like Chris said, we may not know how much food we need. But I think overall we're doing pretty darn good on those fronts.
Expect some bumps.
Yeah,
expect some gaps.
Yeah.
But know that those are they're fixable.
Right.
So but that's, when you're rolling out a plan, it's always going to be something you didn't think of, or things don't go the way that you thought they would go on paper. Don't be discouraged by that.
Right.
Just, we'll fix it and we'll move on. And
course correction.
you guys are very good about doing things like
Continuous
that.
improvement.
So. Other questions, comments?
Food.
Okay, food.
So our next one is, and we're talking about intergovernmental collaborations, community supports, and the social emotional resources that we've been gathering. So one of the pieces, just as Dr. Little said in the beginning, not only are our school districts working together, but all the school districts across Lake County and the state. So for example, with respect to food, we have Lake County school districts that are going to be partnering with North Chicago, that are going to be partnering with Zion, because this community support, you might have the folks in Lincolnshire and Lake Forest that want to do something to help. So we as superintendents are tagging about what school districts can partner with what other school districts in order to get access to educational resources, food resources, those types of things. So that is one piece that is going forward. Do we want to speak up a little bit about the social emotional pieces?
Sure. So because, again, the decision was made yesterday, to Joe's point, one thing that Dr. Vandenbroek and all of us have been talking about is how can we connect with our students that need to have those supports, because for many of our students we're very concerned that need the structure, that this is their safe place, this is their routine. How are we going to do our best to support that? So that's something that we're meeting on and continue to talk about this week. So whether it's talking to our social workers, talking to our psychologists, talking to our administration, can make phone calls and just check in on those families, see what they need. Do they need food? Do they? We're down to this like almost Maslow's hierarchy, right, of the basic needs. What does your family need? And how can we get that for you? And we have the resources. And if we can't get a hold of somebody by phone, we can go there and talk to them. So there's a lot of things that we are able to do, and that's what our, we have a lot of great resources as far as those people that are going to be able to do that. We've also had the community resources that have reached out to us. So Warren Youth and Family Services, they're going to be doing their counseling on the phone now, but we're going to be telling that to our families on Monday, that if anybody is currently receiving those services, those have not stopped. Even though people can't physically go to the building, but they will be continuing on via the phone. So things like that we want to make sure that our families know. In the event of an emergency, who could they call, what could they do? So we're going to be communicating those things to our families.
Questions? Comments? What about staff and teachers?
In what aspect? The same time, you mean caring for and checking on them?
Right.
Yes, that's part of when the schools are meeting with their staffs on Mondays. Our principals and our assistant principals are getting a needs check, and that's on our agenda when we meet with the union. I'll let Martha speak if she wants to talk a little bit about what our initial plans are with our staff. Thank you, Brooke.
Morning. Okay, they've talked a lot about staff and communication that's gone out. One of the things we wanted to make sure that behind the scenes that we're actually still communicating to our staff because they will be home. So we've asked administrators, to reach out to their staff and let them know, please check your email once a day or twice a day because there are things that are going to be coming out of our office and other departments so that employees are still engaged and understand what's going on. For example, we're fortunate that we shifted all our health insurance stuff to an online system. So there is no need for employees to be here, but we have open enrollment right around the corner. There's all these behind-the-scenes things happening. We have our departments connecting to their staff that don't really access email on a day-to-day basis just because of the nature of the work they do, to make sure that they're looking to their Remind system where they get all their communications from the departments. One of the key things is we have people out on leave, and we wanted to make sure that those individuals, either they're on a workers' comp leave, a medical leave, that we still stay in touch with them. So our department has been doing a lot of behind-the-scenes work of connecting with individuals and letting them know, hey, just so you know, this email went out to staff and that, we're on leave right now and what that all means for them. We also have, our principals have reached out to me because some of our employees are asking critical questions because they're anxious and they're scared and they don't know what's going on. We're referring them to the Employee Assistance Program because it's really important that they get the resources they need as well. We also have employees asking us health insurance questions. Like, well, what if I get sick? How will the insurance cover this? Or we're directing them to the insurance companies because they all have different plans. They all have different deductibles. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that's happening where employees are now like, okay, now what? Like, what about me? Like, how does this affect me? We're there for our students, but what about me and my needs? So, so we're doing that. There's some things that will still have to be done internally, like fingerprints, background checks, photo IDs. We won't see a lot of that going on, but we do have the resources to do that. We also have the resources to Skype or Google Hangouts if we need to connect with people that way. Technology has been great to set up HR so that if we need to work remotely, we're ready to go and we can access what we need to access. So our team has been working on being prepared and taking what they need to take in case we aren't able to be here.
And as Lori and I have been talking about, Laura explained, it's at the very basic level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So with our staff, them knowing we are paying you. Nothing is happening with your pay. Nothing is happening with your insurance. That this is a community concern, and we're going to take care of you as humans just like we're taking care of the children. And those are messages that we are working with through our staff and our principals, and that's what our principals will be sharing tomorrow. Today, Saturday, Monday, when they do their staff meetings, because we want to alleviate that fear and that burden and that concern as much as we can for them as a community.
And our substitute teachers
and
also.
Our substitute teachers. We reached out to our subs yesterday, too, to let them know, guess what? Our staff's not going to be here. This is the message we sent out to our staff. We also have retirees that are on our insurance that some days they're out of state. They just show up in our department. So we're reaching out to those individuals that we work with on a day-to-day basis so that they're in communication of what's going on district-wide.
Wow, you guys got it together. Thank you.
There's an article that was shared from Harvard that Lori and I received this morning from Lake County Superintendent, so I'll pass it around. It's entitled How to Keep Students Learning and Communities Calm, and tips from experts at Harvard through the Washington Post. So we'll link that up in your board document so you have it, but we wanted to share that with you.
Thank you.
One of the last items we wanted to discuss, and of course anything you want to discuss, was the questions out there of when we're going to return. And that's very tentative right now. Our goal is to have our students back and our staff back as soon as it's safe for everyone, and none of us know when that is right now. So right now, our tentative date is to have students return after spring break, but we don't know if that's going to be possible. So Brooke will be communicating out, and we will be communicating out any new information we have. If we get another directive, let's say from the governor, that says you must do this, as soon as we get that, we will let our families know. We did not, there's many reasons we didn't want to put a date out there.
Like some districts are
Some
doing.
districts have put dates out there, 2 weeks after that or 3 weeks after that. We just wanted our families to, we'll tell them as soon as we know information, but as soon as we can have our children back and it's safe, we will. So.
Because we don't want those targets to be
change.
moving. I mean, part of our preparedness plan is being responsive to what is happening in our county and in our nation. And so we knew we needed the minimum of that 2-week time for cleaning and disinfecting. What we are hearing, all of us, is that this closure will most likely be longer, so we're preparing our steps educationally with the human resources in our community for longer, but we just, that's our best advice to you, is that we don't give a date, because parents are going to plan and staff are going to plan for that hard date, and that date might get moved, and then that just creates more confusion.
Now, I do understand that, so we know that we'll be out
Through
spring break.
through spring break.
That Tuesday, because that's when the governor shut down the schools till Tuesday Monday the 30th.
30th, it's still the 30th.
Monday the 30th. right.
So my question is, we'll give a lead time? Have we thought about the lead
Absolutely.
time?
Yes.
So we
Okay,
have.
by
So
the
one
end of
thing
next
a couple things we want to give a lead time to, and we are still discussing, is we need to give a lead time to our families. We need to give a lead time to our staff. So one thing we envision is if all of a sudden we're telling teachers and everybody on Monday, okay, now you need to leave, you need to take everything, you need to go, and we're telling our parents, we're going to be telling our parents on Tuesday they're going to be able to come in and get what they need, including medications and things like that. Now we're going to say, now school's going to start again, and we're not going to have medications, we're not going to have some of those things, so we may have to have a lead time coming back in.
Good.
I
Like
foresee
a
that, so we may have a day where we say to our staff, and this has not been flushed out, this is not anything for sure, but we may say, okay, now there's a day where our staff and are coming back in to prepare for our students to come back in, our parents need to come in to get us, if students are bringing home all their books, or they're bringing home medication, or they need to do something, we may need that day to come back and prepare, so that our first day back is really smooth for students, and and they feel that it's a good, great, safe place again.
Love
It's
it.
that whole part
I
of
love it.
recovery, and we as the leaders talked about by the end of next week, we have to give people at least a week lead time. So by the end of next week,
We'll make that
we need to make a decision, what's happening the week of March 30th, and take this really on a week-by-week piece as new information changes.
So
They
parents
can
can plan.
Yes.
Exactly,
'Cause
for their work.
I know for me, my daughters that are in college are now all doing e-learning, and they're in other states, and I'm like, come home, so I would assume that some of our families, if you're not from the area, you might decide, hey, I'm going to shelter in place with immediate family in another state or another community. So that 1 week lead time, I think, would be very helpful, because I want all my babies home with me.
I know.
Two
Other questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
So I know that this could be a long-term, that it's going to be at least a short-term and probably a long-term issue. What can we do? You've been working on this pretty much nonstop for a couple of weeks, and what can we do to help? I feel like our people might be getting, I mean, you're working all the time, and a lot of people are working all the time on this too. What can we do to help make things easier? Or, are there systems we can put in place to try to like kind of spread out the responsibility of dealing with crisis management? Might be a better way to put it, just so that you can.
I'm sure we have some. I think Carla gave a good suggestion, and that is any of our communications that are out there, if you could please, if you're on social media, if you could help us communicate the correct messages to people. If you're hearing anything in the community, if you're hearing rumors, if you're hearing, if you have questions, if you could please, I think the best thing is perhaps if you funnel them to maybe just Laura, then Laura can get them to us, so we have them coming to one place.
And we'll figure out, this idea of a battle rhythm will be really helpful for us too. So we'll figure that out this weekend and give you folks direction, because we want to make sure you're getting the information you need. So if we set certain times for our daily or weekly briefings, that will help us, because then by 5 o'clock at night, I'm getting this from Lori and Joy, and by 6, I'm going to send all my questions to Laura. This whole idea of battle rhythm will be really helpful, too, for us. And you all already do this so very well, and that's knowing that we need to prioritize our time and attention, helping our students and families. So some of the other work that would be typical and routine is shifting, but you're already really good about that. So.
And we'll be meeting with our leadership team daily. And we'll do that at the same time every day once we get through these couple days. So any information from that, we'll be communicating with you.
So are we calling that the Woodland Emergency Operations Center?
Pretty much. We really will, and that's another good point. So we have a crisis team, which are people that are able to make the decisions, have the authority to make the decisions, and have the financial ability to make the decisions. So Don, for example, has the authority. Don has the financial. He can come to the board or come to us and say, I need this money for additional cleaning, and he has the expertise. So there's people on that do that, but then there's also pieces where, as we move through this, we may have a time where we may call a committee together. We say, I'd like a board member, I'd like a parent, I'd like people to come together and say, here's where we're at right now. You tell us how we're doing. You tell us anything you're hearing. So that may develop as this comes, because we can't work in isolation on this.
Right.
So there may be a time where we say, maybe we have a board member or two to help us on this next, and it's part of our board policy that would happen. Our pandemic preparedness policy that would happen. So that may be a time when we would ask for some of your assistance.
Other questions, comments? You've been really quiet. I'm not used to you quiet like that.
They're doing a great job. I don't have anything to add. I mean, just everybody's doing a great job, and it's a lot of work, and it's constantly changing. So it's just trying to do the best you can with information you have at the time you have it.
Yes.
As soon as when you think you've got it, it changes. So, but I think everybody's doing a fabulous job with what we know and preparing for what we don't know.
Yeah.
So the other item for the agenda for this morning is many of our area school districts are taking a look at their governing meeting agendas just in light of non-public gatherings and doing things electronically. So we thought if we could take a look at next Thursday's agenda and get some direction and board consensus about what we wanted to either repackage what's non-essential so we can focus our time. There should be one online and also paper too.
Excuse these guys.
Of course.
It's Saturday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
I just feel like they've been here all night and day.
Yes, we are.
Thanks for everything, guys.
Yeah, thank you for everything.
Yes.
The agenda is
It's at the very back.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's the very last three pages.
Diana, thank you.
Yes, just to broadcast.
Yeah, I would just say, like, I have to defer to the people that know, like, what is necessary on this agenda, time-wise, and what's not.
So we can talk some of that through with you when everybody's got that agenda. So under Superintendent Showcase, we won't be having, obviously, our kiddos coming in here and performing. We need to go through our consent agenda. We can go through our action items, but if we can look at reports, many of those are written. We did want to ask your thoughts about the equity presentation, and if that's something you wanted now, or would you like to read those documents and do that more from a public, when a lot more people can be at the board meeting. We didn't know about that, so what do we want to?
Yeah, I honestly, I think this is a good time to maybe hear some updates on
Okay.
equity.
Sure.
And then also, obviously, the coronavirus plan. We heard a lot about it today, but you guys will be
There will be updates.
having
We will be
updates.
for sure.
And then I think we can, we could, if these other things are all written, and if there's not a timely action item associated with it.
There is for the handbook, ETO, the contract, that will be shifting, as I mentioned. We'll have an update, I talked to Citywide, for you by Wednesday. But for items C, D, E, and F, we are looking for approval at the April board meeting, so we'd like to proceed with those.
Okay, then we should proceed with
Okay.
those.
Right, but if they're just, are those just gonna be written
They
reports, so
are,
we
right.
don't need to have any, like,
Presentation.
any
Right.
presentations
So
in
the only
relationship to those?
presentation would be the equity piece, and then our discussions about where we are with preparedness next Thursday.
Okay.
And then Lori has a lot that she wants to accomplish with you under board ops and planning for the AAT meeting.
Okay.
We want to set up a plan B where we could call in and
So we asked and sought legal guidance about that from the Owners Associations of School Boards yesterday. And right now, the Open Meetings Act hasn't changed, and we don't have a community exposure here in our community. So all the area districts that are having their governing meetings are holding their governing meetings. We're fortunate that we streamline ours, or live stream ours already. So we're not allowed, as of 10:31 today on Saturday morning, to do it on the phone. You have to have 4 more members present for the quorum. Those rules haven't changed.
But
So
to
we
your
wanna-
point, Joe, what we will be doing is telling Brooke, like, other districts are really pushing out the fact that if you want to, really pushing out that. Pushing out the fact that you can watch it remotely. We're very lucky to have that. We don't need to have all the people here, so all the administrators, all the admin do not have to be here.
It's going to be us.
It's going to be us, so I think we can minimize some of those things, but really pushing that out to our community, that we want them to be part of it, but they can be part of it remotely.
We have a board negotiating, or a union negotiating
We can
meeting
talk about
Monday.
that separately.
Okay.
Can we live stream on Facebook?
Where's Brock?
I can ask her.
Maybe.
Facebook Live?
Yeah, because a lot of people do that. Because let me be honest.
I think there was a problem with Facebook Live.
Was it?
I think we had to pay
Yeah,
to
there was
do
something
Facebook
when we
Live
first
for a
started.
board meeting.
Really?
We'll check
At least
into it
when we
for you.
first started, there was a cost.
But because I know like Waukegan does it, but someone else does it for Waukegan. Like a private person goes in
Okay.
and records.
See, that's different, but if I think
Yeah.
we, go ahead, Brooke.
Are we able?
Being on Facebook?
Yes.
Okay, so, it's certainly easy enough to do. I have phone or an iPad or something like that. We have a Facebook account. We absolutely can.
But check it, because like we were saying, when we first started with the live stream, I think, did Dan check it? Someone checked it, and there was a cost for the district to do it, to stream.
But she's going to do it as Brooke.
No, we can do it as well then from an iPad or a phone.
I know we can do it. I know the technology's available, but I think they wanted to charge us because we were an entity. Okay, and that may have changed.
You're remembering
Yeah.
things right about 5-6 years ago.
Right.
But I think things are
Yeah, because I live
different now.
stream and
There
do
is a
things
cost to live stream, to film a public meeting and
that's what you're thinking about.
No, I think Facebook wanted to charge us. I remember that.
She said there is a cost? You said there is a
No,
cost?
not for Facebook though. I mean, there's
Yeah, no.
a technology and a equipment cost.
But we
Oh, no,
can
we
do
know
it.
that.
That's the point.
I'm not worried about that. It was they were going to charge us. There was they had some limit
They
on
did.
actual entities doing it.
And how long. you
And
could
how
do it.
long. That's, yeah.
But things have changed.
But things have
and
changed, so
we-
maybe, so check the permissions and all
In my
that.
previous position of the county, we live streamed different.
right. And I know Waukegan
Okay.
public schools do it.
Okay. So maybe they've changed, or maybe they don't hold you accountable for it.
I can
But if you ask, they'll tell you.
Yeah, just double check, yeah.
Yeah.
The things you run into are if for some reason there was a to the audio system. So there are some limitations, but it does open up the meeting to the public for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brooke.
But just as a question though, I mean, we are live streaming meetings, and so we could drive people to that too. That
Good idea.
So,
Yeah.
but putting it live on Facebook opens it up to people that didn't think to go watch the board meeting because it just shows up where they already are.
Right.
So maybe, like, I know now it's almost where you have to dig down deep to find it on our webpage, so maybe because of the current situation, you know, we could on social media or on Facebook put, here's how you want to see our board meeting, here's how you do it, and maybe put it in a more prominent place on our homepage, so you don't have to dig through 3 different places to find it.
I just want people to have easy access.
Yes.
So that they don't have to come here.
Right.
Right, yes.
We have so many coming.
This will be the one day we would have, people will be outside.
Yes. We don't want to do that.
It'll be like school start time.
We can do that.
So we'll look into both options just to make
Thank
sure,
you.
and we can do both. We can make sure the live stream of our board meeting as usual is easily seen and available, and then we can show it on Facebook so that people that didn't think to come watch it, it shows up for them and they can engage it.
Yeah, it might be poor quality. I'm concerned about the poor quality.
We can test some
Fairly
things.
poor quality.
No.
It's not a professionally produced
Right.
meeting.
Okay.
But it does open the door as if somebody were walking in, they get to see exactly what they're seeing. There is one piece though, putting it live on Facebook, people may be asking questions live.
Yeah.
And
We need to
want to
think
say
through all these
something
things.
on there that we will not be answering questions.
Well, you
I mean, I can certainly be responding to
And
people
say-
saying that, but we can say that the board will not be answering
Right.
questions.
I think, my suggestion, these are excellent suggestions, and we're going to be in these times for a bit. Great suggestion, if we can think through that and what those protocols and standards would, what would look like, and then, you know, the communication aspect of it, because what I don't think we want to do is make something available, and then we're spinning and responding because we don't have a system in place. So with the board's mission, we'll put this on our list and investigate how we do it. But if we can, to Lori's point, redrive for next week the content of easy access for them, we might have some things figured out by Thursday. But when I think of our priorities, and what we talked about this morning, we'll be working on helping the kids and the families. And then, if that's okay with all of you, we'll get to this one next.
Yeah, because I like the idea for maybe next week. If, like you say, tweet it out, send out the link via Facebook, we can reshare it. But yeah, it might be, unless you know, somebody
It's not
contacts.
that difficult, but whatever.
No,
I don't want a long meeting on the 19th with people. I just don't. I'll leave because my husband just had the flu and I looked at him kind of funny. So
what we're worried about, what we're pushing
I know.
back a bit
I
at
understand.
is time and making sure that we have protocols, because if we do it and then parents are asking live questions, they're going to be expecting live answers.
No, Waukegan doesn't answer questions.
Right, but we should have a system in place for it.
We have to
I
have
also think,
systems,
kind of
yes.
like the other piece that we're doing with everything else with this, is we're trying to push people to our webpage. So all the information's always in the same spot. So during this, we're doing it on Facebook, but then next month it's not on Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
So if people know that, like, we can put out on, like, here's where you always want to go if you want to watch the board meeting. I bet there's a lot of people that don't even know that we do this.
True.
So I think if we get that message out this month, and they always know here's where you always go, I think that in long term and now will help us more.
Yeah, I was going to say too, for next week, is it next week?
This week.
Thursday's board meeting, if we have a quorum present, we can hold the meeting. So if you don't feel comfortable, and we have a quorum, you can attend by phone. So we want you to feel comfortable because we do have to carry out the business of the district. But also, another point I want to make with that too, if there were presentations that are necessary, even going forward, if this thing goes on, maybe we could do the presentation, you know, via Zoom or something, have that person not necessarily come, but do it remotely.
Sure.
so that we can keep the business of the district moving forward.
Yes.
So that, and eventually maybe we'll get a waiver in that law because there is a emergency declared that will allow us to relax our quorum rules. But right now, we do have to have a quorum of the board present to do business, and we have to keep the business moving because we want to pay our bills, we want to pay our
I'm just saying,
staff.
I don't want to have a long presentation with a bunch of PowerPoints on something that is not time sensitive.
Yes.
Right.
That's why
That can hold off.
Written
then-
reports.
Well, that's what we were saying, what things we have to vote on, new, if we need that report in order to vote, and not just the report, but we have to have the discussion, so that when we come back the next month to vote, we're making informed decisions on our voting. We want to stay the course, stay factual, not operate off of emotion and fear, but also be responsible to the fact that this is a pandemic and we don't know what's happening with this virus and what's going to happen next. So I appreciate that, but we have to, be calm in the face of an emergency.
Always calm.
So the two pieces, to summarize with the board agenda, that will be changing for you when you look at your board materials before next Thursday. So the citywide contract and fees will be changing, and we'll have Dr. Thomas streamline and update the equity piece with respect to our work now and what, the next several months. So that is one that's a fairly long presentation. So we'll look at that again and repackage that.
Okay.
Okay? All right, that's what we needed. Thank you. And thank you, board, for calling this very essential meeting this morning and for your support of the school community and our team. I just have to end with how we began. Our team, our teachers, our bus drivers, our school staff, our Board of Education is dedicated, calm, heartfelt in taking care of our children and staff. And we are not doing this in isolation. We are doing this together. So I thank you to everyone for doing a great job.
On another note, we just heard, I was checking email to check something for this, and we just heard from Warren High School and Gurney 56, they're doing the same thing we are with food. So in our community, there will be a lot of opportunities for families to get what they need from that aspect, so that's great.
And Lori and I talked this morning about starting a governmental leaders conversation this week. She and I, we're not going to wait for people to do it. We're going to pick some dates, send it out to our Gurney and our area governmental leaders so we can try to make sure that the resources, and it's not only Gurney though, it's Grays Lake for Woodland, those resources and that community message are shared. So more to come on that, but we'll get that going.
I saw on Facebook last night, Round Lake already has their grab and go
So
schedule,
does Highland Park.
locations.
Warren just did theirs this morning.
We're Chris and his team, they made the decision while we were at other places. We ordered the food on Thursday, so that was the first piece. We had to have the foods. We're ready to go maybe by the middle of next week. So
Okay.
we just need
Thanks, everybody.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. No citizen statements? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Meeting adjourned. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good